Right now at 11, 14 overdoses in just 4 hours. The opioid epidemic took its toll on the city of Camden today. And tonight, leaders are sounding the alarm.
NBC 10's Aaron Baskerville is live in Camden for us. And Aaron, I know you just spoke to one of the people who overdosed just today.
Jim and Jackie, I certainly did. A very scary situation. That 27-year-old walked right over to me just minutes after leaving the emergency room. He desperately wanted us to share his message. But for those victims, I'm told most of them, they were sent here this morning to Cooper University Hospital sometime between 10 in the morning and 2 o'clock this afternoon. But I've been told, thankfully, no one has died so far.
It was already on me.
And nobody took it from you at the hospital?
Nope. They didn't check my pockets.
Can I see that one more time?
I can't show you the stamp, but yes.
Michael Corsello walking straight out of the hospital and right over to our cameras tonight, showing us the heroin he claims he's about to use. The 27-year-old tells NBC 10 he's one of the 14 users who overdosed on fentanyl-laced heroin in South Camden today. He spent several hours inside the emergency room.
My hands were bound. They said that I was freaking out. I was punching myself in the face. They said that I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was going ballistic, and then I just dropped.
New Jersey's Attorney General sent out a warning this afternoon on social media. Fentanyl is considered 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin. Corsello claims he overdosed twice today on Broadway. We're told all of these overdoses happened within 4 hours, most on Broadway, some victims driven to the hospital by friends. At least one had to be revived using Narcan. Corsello desperately wants everyone to listen up.
I have bald spots on my head. I gotta wear a mohawk for the rest of my life. I got scars all over my body because of this drug. I want every kid to understand that if they can stay away from this, I have ruined 3 families.
You heard his emotional plea right there. He says the real scary thing is that he has no idea what's going to be in the batch that he buys. I'm told one person was arrested this afternoon, and after that person was arrested, these overdoses dropped significantly. For now, we're live in Camden. Aaron Baskerville, NBC 10 News.
NBC 10 News starts now.
Right now at 11, the road to recovery. Just 6 days ago, Michael Corsello spoke in front of our camera about overdosing on the streets of Camden. Now he's taking the first step to turn his life around. Corsello is just one example of the toll the opioid epidemic has taken on local families.
When members of a treatment center saw our story, they made it their mission to get him help. NBC 10 South Jersey Bureau reporter Sidney Long was there for the start of his new journey.
At a young age, my mom married my stepfather.
It's been 6 days since Michael Corsello nearly died from a heroin overdose, revived by Narcan not once but twice, moments before approaching our camera.
I want every kid to understand that if they can stay away from this, I have ruined 3 families.
Corsello now explains he's never been there for his 3 children.
I saw the news van there. I just expected someone had been murdered.
He didn't know he was part of a story, one of 14 who overdosed that day. He didn't know the passion in his voice would have an impact.
Did you use again that night?
Yeah, I used it for the rest of the weekend.
When the founders at Liberation Way Rehabilitation saw Michael's story,
it was go. How do we find him? Let's give him an opportunity.
They spent days tracking him down to his aunt's house in Gloucester City. He'd walked an hour from Camden to beg for a shower. He's now agreed to get well.
What is your promise to yourself? Why now?
The only promise that I have to myself right now is that I'm going to be open to suggestions and really fight.
Just going to be checking your blood pressure.
Today is day 1 of a 14-day detox.
And an individual that goes through our program is kind of crawling, walking, and then running.
He's been offered a free ride in a Fort Washington rehab center. Phase 2 will be inpatient therapy.
I didn't realize the grasp it was going to take on my life. So, hold me accountable for picking up, but I didn't ask to be addicted. I didn't ask to actually fall under this spell.
Now, working to break that spell.
Are you scared?
I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of my past.
But looking forward to a future with support and hope.
I just have hope in the fact that I feel so good right now. I'm so excited for tomorrow for once.
The ripple effect of him changing and getting better and finding recovery and giving that back is immeasurable.
The only good thing about addiction is beating it.
From Fort Washington, Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
NBC 10 has followed the impact of the opioid epidemic on families across our region.
It's part of our special series called Generation Addicted. We have full coverage on NBC10.com, including a map of local treatment centers where you can get help for your loved ones.
I want every kid to understand that if they can stay away from this, I have ruined 3 families.
2 weeks after he overdosed on heroin, this man reaches a recovery milestone.
I'm safe. I don't have to be in survival mode. I have to be in recovery mode.
All new at 5 o'clock, how he's made it this far and the battle that still lies ahead. Exactly 2 weeks have passed since Michael Corsello overdosed on heroin and then made that plea for others to stay away from that drug.
5 days later, he checked into rehab, and today marks his 8th full day of recovery. Corsello has been sharing his journey to sobriety with NBC 10's Sydney Long through all of the critical steps, and he explains the toughest part of the process is happening right now.
You get emotions out and you can say things. You can say anything in this book. This is my book.
Michael Corsello is working through the pain of addiction.
Once again, I'm sitting here stuck in my head, knowing I'm truly blessed to not be dead.
Through journaling about his struggle.
It's like Russian roulette, not knowing if the last bag is next.
Today, he read us an entry called A Note to His Old Self.
I personally am so disappointed in you. Old self, you need to take life more serious.
He's now a solid 8 days into a medically monitored recovery at Liberation Way Rehab. He says he won't ever be able to erase the helplessness he felt while using heroin on the streets of Camden.
Unbelievable thirst and cracked lips and freezing cold rain and, crying.
But says now, instead of the fight to stay alive,
I don't have to be in survival mode. I have to be in recovery mode.
Over the weekend, he FaceTimed with his mom, dad, and stepdad.
She told me I'm beautiful. It's so funny hearing. My mom, she's so grateful that I'm here.
On Thursday, Michael will be given the final dose of his detox medication, and that's when the medical staff here says the real work begins.
This is the tough time because now he's sort of waking up, getting clean.
He's beyond the acute withdrawal.
Clamminess, high blood pressure, high pulse rate.
Director of Medical Services and Compliance, Stephanie Labes, says his next goal is intense group therapy.
Addiction is a disease of isolation, and left alone, you think your situation is unique.
This is the first time that I'm actually struggling for positivity.
Michael says it's also the first time he doesn't feel alone.
I am so content right now that I actually feel inner peace.
From Fort Washington, Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
Right now at 6, President Trump declares the opioid epidemic as a public health emergency. The president says it is time to liberate the country from this deadly drug crisis.
He said today 175 people die from overdoses every day in the U.S. That is 7 people every hour, including many lives in our area.
The president's emergency declaration doesn't come with any specific money attached, but he says he is telling federal agencies to use all their resources to fight the drug crisis. And he wants to focus on providing better treatment for people suffering from addiction.
That treatment can be really tough on families fighting opioid addiction. We've been following one man on his journey through drug rehab. He left his recovery center last night, hours after we aired a story about him. He went to Kensington looking to buy heroin, but then an NBC 10 viewer recognized him from our coverage and stepped in to get him back on track.
NBC 10's Sydney Long explains how that life-saving encounter happened.
27-year-old Michael Corsello took off from the safety and support of his free ride rehab journey last night, landing in Kensington and in the grips of an NBC 10 viewer who gave him heck.
Somebody had seen him on the news, on NBC, and said, "What the hell are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in treatment."
Corsello didn't use and is back at rehab. It's a journey Michael Armstrong knows all too well.
At no point is somebody sticking a needle in their arm thinking life is good.
He says growing up in Pennsauken with a Camden Catholic education, he never imagined he would get wrapped up in drugs.
I had 2 loving parents, brother and sister, grew up in a nice neighborhood.
He says it was a fall from a third-floor college dorm room window at Widener University his freshman year.
I landed on my back, and I remember the doctor yelling and saying, you know what, you could be dead.
And that scripts for pain meds gave him a license to use. It got expensive. He taught himself how to shoot heroin by stealing a needle from his sister's nursing school bag.
Friends are moving on, families kind of just waiting in suspense and fear of the phone call.
Armstrong tried but could never detox himself on the street.
What was rock bottom, Michael?
Jail. Jail was rock bottom.
A phone call to his dad from jail was the wake-up. His parents had invested enough.
I'll be here to support you, you know, emotionally and, you know, spiritually. But we're done. We're done. And it was that moment was like I believed him.
Now Armstrong serves as that voice, a founder at Liberation Way, inspiring others through his journey. He considers it his life's work.
If I looked back at myself and said, 5-year-old Mike, this is what your life's going to look like, he would run away from me. I'm okay with me. I'm okay with what I did because it's not me today.
From South Jersey, Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
He was sitting at this fence.
What, this fence right
yeah,
here?
And he was banging his head against the fence.
Patrice Thiede tells NBC 10 she recognized him right away from our stories and needed to jump in. By the fence on Kensington Avenue in Kensington was Michael Corsello, shortly after leaving his rehab facility in Fort Washington.
I don't want to be sleeping on the street, would you? Listen, we got to. They get robbed, beat up. It's all true. You come down here for help and you never go home.
We've been following the ups and downs of Corsello since he came up to us in Camden 2 weeks ago after overdosing twice in just a few hours. He's like thousands in the area fighting through heroin addiction.
How did you know it was him? How did you recognize
his
him?
voice and his scar on his head.
Thiede says he came to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting last night in Kensington, got robbed, and was out of control. She had no idea if he slipped up again. So Thiede got him in her car and eventually back to the rehab center where he is now. She's being called a guardian angel.
I don't look at myself that big.
Right, but in reality, you probably made some sort of difference.
I hope he changes. That's what I'd like to see.
And so do the thousands rooting for a victory over addiction. Aaron Baskerville, NBC 10 News.
And Patrice, who you just saw there in that piece, says she understands the horrors of heroin addiction. The father of her 2 kids died from an overdose this summer on the streets of Kensington.
Now entering his 4th full week of rehab.
What were your favorite sports growing up?
Recovering addict Michael Corsello got a visit from former Flyers defenseman Chris Therien.
Was it the heavy, hard drugs even at that age?
The now NBC Sports Philadelphia rinkside analyst saw Corsello's story on NBC 10 on a night he was off the ice.
It was intriguing. And for me, and you know, the other thing that jumped out was this kid had this cowboy jersey on it.
So today, Therien passed along a Flyers sweatshirt.
Awesome. A little something there for the hometown, and we'll get rid of that cowboy.
It really means a lot to me that somebody that's a well-known person, you know, recognizes my struggle.
It comes as Corsello now has the detox medications in the rearview mirror.
The cravings are always going to be there, so I'm told.
Having always failed at trying to recover on his own, this is the furthest he's ever come. His goal is complete abstinence, be it drugs, drinking, or smoking.
That's something that I'm really working on now, and then working on with the anxiety of never drinking again at a party or at a game, a Super Bowl.
It was just 10 days ago that Corsello himself was ready to throw in the towel on his recovery, walking out of the doors of his rehab, his mission to get high. He wound up in Kensington. A female viewer spotted him and he says used choice curse words, reminding he's supposed to be in rehab. You were going to use that night?
Yeah, I probably, if the stars weren't aligning the way they are for me, I didn't see the opportunity that I have and the miracle that I'm being blessed with until that moment.
You should be proud of yourself, dude, because that's a hard first step to take. I just wanted him to know that, listen, you know what, you're going through a tough time now. He's better today than he was a week ago.
Corsello is grateful.
I feel alive. I feel hopeful.
So many key players are hoping he scores big at beating addiction. From Yardley, Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
This is NBC 10 News.
Right now at 6, a young father trying to break his heroin addiction takes a dangerous turn in his road to recovery. We first introduced you to Michael Corsello weeks ago outside Cooper Medical Center, making this plea on camera.
I want every kid to understand that if they can stay away from this, I have ruined 3 families.
And since then, we have been documenting his journey. And tonight, we are hearing from his mother for the first time.
NBC 10's Sydney Long shares that mother's new fears as her son relapses in his fight to recover.
A moment of weakness, a dose of real life. Michael Corsello abruptly left rehab unfinished, despite making major strides that we've documented for a month.
Did the drug hit him harder this time?
So a lot of times when somebody has time separated from the drug, their tolerance goes down.
An overdose landed him at Cooper Hospital's trauma unit in critical condition the night before Thanksgiving.
Oh God, my heart just dropped. I'm thinking, oh my God.
Doctors quickly learned Corsello had pneumonia. Right now he's sedated and breathing with the help of a ventilator.
Whether you want to call them coincidences or God incidences, everything happens for a reason.
Corsello's mom, Tina, flew in today from North Carolina.
When he saw me, he smiled and he went,
and spoke to us about the phone call she's dreaded for a decade when it comes to his addiction.
that phone call that says, I'm sorry to inform you, but your son is dead. That is the worst phone call a mother could ever get.
Simply putting down the drug is not the solution.
This backslide, all part of a recovery journey that takes time.
Once Corsello can breathe on his own again and is well enough to be medically discharged, he would revisit with the case manager handling his rehab to make a fresh start.
We won't give up. Even if you give up, we won't give up. And especially in Michael's case, he's got a lot of support with the community as well as our program as well.
I am so grateful for Liberation Way. I am so grateful for you guys covering his story.
Corsello Bartz has faith.
There's hundreds of people praying for him. I know he can do this.
From Camden, Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.